Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and we are taking a look today at our top 19 picks for the 2022 NHL Draft. So we are doing the Goal Line Hockey mock draft here for May 2022. We know the draft order now. Everything's kind of set in stone now. And it's only a matter of time before the NHL Draft arrives. So we have our first 19 picks. So now we have the most updated to-the-date look here as the Washington Capitals were eliminated. So we are up to the point of the Capitals being eliminated. So we're going to start off with the Capitals drafting at number 19. So with that said, let's get right into it. So we're starting off, like I said, with the Washington Capitals at the 19th overall pick. And they are going to be drafting a defenseman. They've got some good forwards in their system. They have guys like Connor McMichael. They have some guys like Axel Jonsson-Fjällby who they want to see a little bit more of. They have some young guys in there. So I think they're going to look to go defense. And in the next 2 years, they have some defensemen that are going to be kind of aging out, and I think that they're looking at adding some more defense. And I think they could be going no further than over in Seattle of the WHL, left shot defenseman Kevin Korchinski. Now, this kid is projected to be a middle-of-the-lineup player, and he's one of those guys that he's been compared a lot to Shea Theodore as a defenseman who is the defenseman of the Vegas Golden Knights, who Washington actually saw in the 2018 Stanley Cup playoffs when they won the Cup. So he's one of those guys that I think is really talented. A lot of people like what Korchinski brings. There is some question about his actual upside as a defenseman in the National Hockey League. But I think there is still some sentiment out there that this could be a guy that does make the NHL. And like I said, you're looking at kind of a Shea Theodore prototype kind of player. So let's take a look here. So now we move up to number 18. And at number 18, we have a center going to the Minnesota Wild. And that is Yuri Kulich, who is playing in Karlovy of the Czech Republic. The Minnesota Wild have some pretty good prospects already, and it's not like they necessarily need Yuri Kulich, but he's another guy you could add in the top 6, and he's actually dropped here in my predictions here. I have him at number 18, and a lot of people have him a lot earlier than that. Well, not much earlier. At number 15 from The Athletic, they have him at 15. He's projected to be a middle-of-the-lineup player. Again, this is kind of the similar theme here. He's projected to be maybe a second, third-line center, and that works perfectly in Minnesota. They've already got Marco Rossi. He's kind of the guy there. They also have Joel Eriksson-Ek. So worst case, if Yuri Kulich is a top six forward, he could be playing on the wing. So I think what you're looking at with Kulich, a lot of people have been comparing him a lot to Bo Horvat in that type of game. So I think with a guy like Yuri Kulich, I think this is somebody that, again, you never have enough centers, right? And worst case, you move him to the wing at the National Hockey League level. So I think Yuri Kulich is a safe bet here for the Minnesota Wild, and he's a guy that I think that, again, you add more forwards to the depth chart. The Minnesota Wild already have the best blue lines in the league. They have Kalen Addison, so I don't necessarily think they need a defenseman here, and I think they're going to go with Yuri Kulich. At number 17, the Nashville Predators. Now, this is a team that's got they could go a couple of different ways. I'm not sold on what they could do here, but I have them going with a defenseman here, a left shot defenseman from the OHL playing in the Saginaw with the Saginaw Spirit, and that is Pavel Mintyukov. Pavel Mintyukov is projected to, again, to be a middle-of-the-lineup defenseman. What you're looking at here with Mintyukov, probably a second-pairing defenseman. A lot of people have compared him to Mikhail Sergachev. That's a pretty high praise. He was projected to go in the top 10 earlier this season. His draft stock has lowered just a little bit, but he is an exciting defenseman with a pace and aggressive as a rusher. He's got a great skating ability, pressure to the opponent. He's that kind of defenseman, and again, a lot like Mikhail Sergachev, which I think, obviously, the Nashville Predators would love a defenseman like that in the fold. Moving up to number 15 here is the Vancouver Canucks. And the Canucks are another team that I think could go a couple of different ways. They could go with a defenseman. They could go with a forward. Most notably, I think they're going to go with a center here. And the reason I think they're going to go with a center is they just brought in Vasily Podkolzin. They've got Quinn Hughes. I could see them going a different direction here because what if JT Miller or Bo Horvat leaves the organization? They're going to have another hole down the middle. So that's where I think a guy like Marco Kasper from the SHL's Rogel could come in and actually be a pretty good, reliable center. Now, Marco Kasper, you have to remember, again, he's projected to be a second, third line center. He's, a strong guy, 6'1". He's only 17 years old. He's one of the younger guys in the SHL. And again, in the SHL, you are playing men. So he's playing guys a lot older than him. His game is really going to be able to translate well to the NHL. They project him as a second line center. He's another Austrian guy. So playing with, Marco Rossi and, oh my God, I can't believe I just did that. Marco Rossi and Marco Kasper draw a lot of comparables to each other as players. He's going to be another guy that I think the NHL, he could come in sooner than, maybe quicker than some of these other prospects. He's a guy, maybe not year one, Marco Kasper, but year two. I wouldn't be surprised if in the 2020, maybe the 2024 training camp, Marco Kasper's fighting for a spot in the Vancouver Canucks center lineup. And again, you have to remember at that point, they've already made their decision about guys like Bo Horvat and JT Miller. Marco Kasper could come right into that equation and be a really nice complementary piece. Now, at number 14, we're going to have another center here. And at number 14, a lot of people have been very high or very low on this center from the Winnipeg Ice. And that is centerman Connor Geekie. Connor Geekie is 6'3", almost 200 pounds, so he can still put on a little size considering he's 6'3". So he's only going to get bigger, get a bigger frame. Connor Geekie, like I said, very polarizing, whether he's going to go 15 or 5. It's that kind of situation here for Geekie. A lot of people really like his game. He's a bigger guy already. A top player in one of the best teams in the CHL this season, again, in the WHL. He's been playing alongside a guy that's going to be a fellow teammate of his, who has been a teammate this season in the WHL, who is further up in the draft charts, in Matthew Savoie, who also has been playing in Winnipeg. Again, this is a guy a lot of people like because of his high skill level, his size. He's not afraid to shy away from the physical side of the game. He can run a power play. Connor Geekie is going to definitely be interesting depending on what people think of him. And Connor Geekie has drawn some criticism because of some situations off the ice. And that's why Connor Geekie's stock has lowered just a little bit. A guy that, could go in the top 10, but again, wouldn't be shocking if he was 15 either. Obviously, his brother is playing right now in Seattle with Morgan Geekie, who's playing with the Kraken. So his brother could help him out maybe a little bit in terms of getting into the NHL and knowing the ins and outs of some things. So Connor Geekie, maybe not a year one guy, but maybe a year two guy in the National Hockey League, maybe in 2024. And again, for the Winnipeg Jets, who could see some changes to their group, they've had a lot of centers kind of coming in and going. It's probably going to look like the Cole Perfetti and Connor Geekie show up there in Winnipeg. And again, he's been playing right down the road with the Ice in Winnipeg, so it would make sense to see Connor Geekie go to the Jets. There's a lot of guys from Manitoba in the top of this year's draft, so they could go a lot of different directions if they want the hometown kid. But I think they're going to go here with Connor Geekie, who was playing down the road all season. So at number 13, we're heading to the New York Islanders, and this is one of those guys that I think is a safe bet. And considering the Islanders have a lot of depth already in the chart, you might be looking at a 3-year situation for Dinda Yurov. I don't think he's a guy that's going to get rushed into the NHL by any means, especially with Lou Lamoriello. And according to The Athletic, they have him as number 9. So they have him as a top 10 prospect. I have him going here at number 13 to the Islanders. Again, it's a safer bet for the Islanders. You're probably not looking at him as the ceiling as a top winger, a top-line winger, but there is a lot of reason to believe he's going to be a good hockey player overall. Dania Yurov has been playing in the KHL with Magnitogorsk. And he's a guy that is a safer bet for some of these teams that have the depth, like the Islanders, that they need wingers, but they don't necessarily need him to come in right away. And that might be a benefit for a guy like Dania Yurov, kind of pulling off the move the Islanders did last year with Arttu Räty in the second round. The Islanders have been drafting a lot of wingers here recently. It was Simon Holmstrom, Arttu Räty, and potentially Dania Yurov. I think this is a situation where the Islanders take the best player available. And considering the Islanders' center depth, you don't need a guy like Connor Geekie or Casper or Nazar. The Islanders already have Pajot, Nelson, and obviously Matt Barzal. So the Islanders don't need a center there, and I think it's too early for them to go for a guy like Kevin Korchinski or Pavel Matikov. So I think the Islanders are safe with that in Dania Yurov. And we know that, Lou is not afraid to make that weird trade, that weird move, like Arttu Räty or Simon Holmstrom, who is projected to be in the second round. So moving up to number 12, Jarmo Kekalainen and the Columbus Blue Jackets are going to be very interesting. I'm not even sure they're going to draft with this 12th overall selection, as this pick may end up getting traded. They could potentially, I've been hearing, the latest rumor is that they could trade their 6th and 12th overall picks to New Jersey in order to select that center at the second spot, which would be Logan Cooley. So that would be really interesting if the Columbus Blue Jackets were able to pull off that move. I think that's something that could definitely draw some interest, and kind of like Connor Geekie, another center that some people have in the top 5 and some people have in the mid to late first round. And that's Brad Lambert of the Blue Jackets. I think the Blue Jackets, the Finnish connection here, Brad Lambert seems like a fit there. And I think with Brad Lambert, again, you never have too many centers. The big question, though, with Lambert is kind of like Connor Geekie. There is some questions about his off-ice situation, and that's why Lambert has fallen in the draft class, is a lot of people aren't sure about that. And we know that a team like the Blue Jackets, Jarmo Kekalainen likes guys that have a chip on their shoulder, and a guy like Brad Lambert might be a little bit full of himself, and that might actually be a distraction. And considering they've dealt with the Pierre-Luc Dubois of the world and Panarin and everything else, he may say to himself, we don't want that type of guy in our locker room, just not really a good fit for us. So that's something that I would consider here. But Brad Lambert, he changed teams. He played with JYP in the beginning of the year with Liga, and inevitably went to the Pelicans to end the season. So Brad Lambert has all the talent in the world, high-end skill, but again, a lot of questions about him overall as a hockey player in the sense of the off-ice stuff. A lot of teams are a little bit weary of a guy like Brad Lambert. All right, and obviously his connection, though, again, crazy as it sounds, he has the hands of Patrick Kane and the potential to be a Johnny Gaudreau type player. Not saying he's going to be that good, but that style of player. All right, so at number 11, this one's kind of another interesting bet here for the San Jose Sharks and Doug Wilson. They definitely need some help on the blue line, and I think they're going to go... oh no, this is a winger. So I think they're going to go with a winger, especially considering what they could lose this year. I think they're going to have problems keeping guys like Timo Meier around, and I think they're going to need some more... some winger depth. And I mean, you could say they go for a center here, but again, at this spot, there isn't a ton of centers, and they did draft William Eklund last year, who can play center. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go with this pick. I mean, even if they keep this pick, do they trade this pick in order to get somebody for next season? I think it's the safe bet to keep the draft pick. But we could see them go that route. So Ivan Miroshnichenko, the left winger from Omsk of the KHL. Miroshnichenko, again, projected to be a second, third line player. He's a winger, and a lot of people have compared him to Alexander Ovechkin. He's not going to be Ovechkin. Don't get that thought necessarily out of your head. He's not as talented as the grade A in terms of the skill, but again, kind of like the last pick, he's going to play that similar game to that type of player. He's a comparable to Miroshnichenko, and Miroshnichenko has talk about a chip on his shoulder. That is Ivan Miroshnichenko. He's definitely got a chip on his shoulder. He's dealt with Hodgkin's lymphoma. He's been going through cancer, the same cancer that Mario Lemieux had back in the 90s. So talk about a struggle, but this kid has persevered. He's got a high-end shot. His overall skills are average compared to everybody else, but his release and his shot is the difference maker for Ivan Mrazhnachenko. And that's why I think the San Jose Sharks, looking to score more goals in the next couple of seasons, this is a guy that can score goals. And Mrazhnachenko is going to be the answer to the San Jose Sharks question in that situation. All right, so moving up into the top 10, we have here the Anaheim Ducks. The Ducks could move this pick as well. I think they're kind of one of those teams that, unless they're sold with the guy that's there at 10, they could move this pick as well. I think we're going to see a lot of moving of draft picks this year, especially in the top 20. Cutter Gauthier, the left winger, he actually falls a lot in my pick. He went from 6 in the Athletic all the way up to 10 here in my predictions. Cutter Gauthier is the power forward guy, and Pat Verbeek coming in to Anaheim really wants to make this team bigger and more aggressive, and a guy like Cutter Gauthier, I mean, look at his name, Cutter Gauthier. I mean, he sounds like a beast, right? Again, very similar to Ivan Mrazhnachenko. He's projected to be a top middle of the lineup player, so he could be a top line player for the Ducks. Cutter Gauthier, power forward guy, really good shot, and he's big. And Pat Verbeek will be drooling over the idea of having this guy. A lot of people have him projected to go at number 13 in this year's draft. I have him going here at number 10 to the Anaheim Ducks. I think he's a really good fit. You want to look at a NHL comparable. A lot of people have compared him to the likeliness of a Chris Kreider of the New York Rangers, which, considering the season he had this year, I think Pat Verbeek and the Anaheim Ducks fans would be quite pleased to have a guy like that in Anaheim in Cutter Gauthier. So that's what you're looking at there. And we know that, the Ducks are not afraid to pick up guys from the U.S. National Development Team, Troy Terry, most recently Trevor Zegras. So I could see them going that route. At number 9, the Buffalo Sabres here are going to go with a defenseman. They went with Frank Nazar with their 16th selection. They pick up the center. I think they're going to go with a defenseman here, Denton Mateychuk. Denton Mateychuk is playing in Moose Jaw with the Moose Jaw Warriors in the Western Hockey League. A lot of people like Denton Mateychuk. This is more of a positional need, and I think that the Buffalo Sabres can afford to do this because they have so many draft picks. They can afford this. He's projected to go number 13 according to The Athletic. He's projected to go 20 in terms of the rankings. So this is a mid to late first round pick that I think could be kind of the more, again, I'm not comparing him to Moritz Seider, but that type of pick where he moves up drastically in the draft. I think Denton Mateychuk could be the guy that the Sabres kind of reach for in this draft class and go for that left shot defenseman. Like I said, they get Nazar at 16, so why not go for a guy here in Denton Mateychuk? A lot of people have compared him a lot to Ryan Ellis, most recently of the Philadelphia Flyers. He's a pretty good player overall, probably a second pairing defenseman, maybe the potential of a first pairing guy. But Denton Mateychuk, just to add some more depth around Owen Power on that blue line, I think that's a really good addition to that group around Jacob Bryson. You're really adding a nice piece if they go with Mateychuk. At number 8 here, I'm not really reaching too far, but this is a slight reach here for the Detroit Red Wings. A lot of people, when I looked up stuff on Denton Mateychuk, Jonathan Lekerimäki, I definitely butchered that. I'll try it again. Denton Lekerimäki. Jonathan Lekerimäki, the right winger from Djurgården, Sweden. We know that Steve Yzerman has a lot of guys over there scouting, guys like Lidstrom. I want to say, I don't remember who the other guy is, but they have a couple of guys in the scouting department over there in specifically Sweden. And we know that, Detroit likes their Swedish guys as well. Love that European flair in the Red Wings colors. I think they're going to go with that here with Jonathan Lekerimäki. He's being compared to Trevor Zegras. Maybe not the same level of Trevor Zegras, but that type of player. And I think when you look at the Red Wings overall, this would be kind of the answer to what they could have got in the draft a couple years ago with Alexei Lafreniere. They have Lucas Raymond. I mean, down the middle, they're kind of solid already. I like what they have down the middle. I don't think they really need another center. You could argue they could go after somebody further back like a Geeky or a Casper or a Nazar. But other than that, I mean, those guys are picked really later, like 14, 15, and 16. So with Detroit's pick here at 8, I think you go with a guy like Garamecki, and I think that's a pretty solid selection for them. He has the potential to be a top-line player. But again, he played really well in Sweden's under-20 in November. He led the under-18 World Juniors in scoring back in November. So this is a guy that I think that Detroit, who's looking to score more goals, have some talent around Larkin and Raymond and Bertuzzi. Like Karamecki can definitely do that for them. Moving up to number 7 here, we are going over to Ottawa. And this was a late change here because I had the Blue Jackets changing their selection. So it kind of changed. These two teams flipped. So I have the Ottawa Senators going at number 7 here with a winger. And I'm going with Joakim Kemell. Joakim Kemell, who played in JYP of Liga, who also played with Brad Lambert earlier this season. A lot of people are very high on Joakim Kemell, a guy that could potentially go in the top 5 if Seattle or Philadelphia doesn't go with those two defensemen. I could see a guy like Joakim Kemell maybe moving up there. I like what he brings as a guy. A lot of people have compared him to David Pastrnak, which, talk about praise. Really good pick there for the Ottawa Senators. I don't think they would mind that. They have a ton of defensemen already. They have Thomas Chabot. They have Eric Brandstrom. They have Lassie Thompson. They have Jacob Bernard-Docker. They have Jake Sanderson. They have enough defensemen. They're not going for a D-man here. I think it's a safe bet here that they go with Joakim Kemell. He's going to be a guy that could come in, and I mean, he could be a year 1 guy in Ottawa. I think more likely you're going to see him in 2024, potentially cracking the lineup for the Ottawa Senators, maybe late season 2024. I think Joakim Kemell is a guy, considering he's been playing in the SHL with guys that are already NHL players. I think that's going to be a benefit for him, and he'll be more NHL ready quicker than some of these other guys. At number 6, this was one of the changes I made last minute. The Columbus Blue Jackets, again, if they don't trade their picks, I think they'd ideally like to go with a defenseman here, whether that's Juracek or Nemec, but I don't think they'll be available at number 6 to the Columbus Blue Jackets. So unless they move up their draft pick here, I think they're going to have to go with another center here. You take the best player available here, and I have them going with Matthew Savoie of the Winnipeg Ice. Yes, the teammate of Connor Geeky, who is playing with the Winnipeg Ice as well. Matthew Savoie, a lot of people are very high on Savoie, and he is the prime contender. If he's going to go to Seattle or Philadelphia to knock out one of those defensemen, I think a lot of people like Matthew Savoie, and that's a guy that you can build around. A lot of people have compared him actually to Matt Barzal. So Matt Savoie, again, if you're talking about Matt Barzal here, he's got a lot of talent. I think a lot of people see a lot of potential in him at the next level. He is a little bit on the smaller side, which is one of his disadvantages. He's 5'9", 175 pounds. A lot of people have him ranked in the top 8, which is really good. His skating is above NHL level. His hockey sense above most of the rest here. And again, another guy has the potential to be a top-line center. So, if you're talking about high-end talent, Matthew Savoie and Brad Lambert, I think would be 2 really good additions to that top 6 in Columbus. And that's kind of all you need there. And at that point, maybe you look at maybe even making a trade for a defenseman at that point, because you've got so many good players up front there. And I think in this spot at 6, I think Columbus would have liked to have moved up into that top 5, because I think they would have been a lot happier. But at this point, you take the best player available, and I think Kekalainen will do that with Savoie. So now that leads us into the top 5, and we are going to see some defensemen, so get used to hearing the name defenseman picked at this spot. At number 5, and a lot of people have him at number 5, the Slovakian right-shot defenseman Simon Nemec. Nemec is very high on people's radar. A lot of people have compared him a lot to Rasmus Dahlin of the Buffalo Sabres. I think the Philadelphia Flyers have needs all over, and I wouldn't be surprised if they went with Matthew Savoie. But I think they're going to go with Simon Nemec. Really good defenseman. He's a guy that can build that blue line around, especially if they decide to make some trades like trading out a guy like Ivan Provorov. A guy like Nemec could kind of come in there and be that next right shot guy. And really be the future defenseman alongside guys like Cam York there in Philadelphia. So I think building a core around York and Nemec really would change the blue line there. At number 4, the Seattle Kraken, I think they're going to go with David Jiricek, the Czech Republic defenseman. A lot of people like him as well. Another right-shot defenseman. The Seattle Kraken have only one right-shot defenseman in their entire system. So they're pretty much priming themselves for selecting a right-shot guy. It's going to be a tough decision for them here, whether they go for Jiricek or Nemec. But I think for whoever they go with, they're going to be happy with that selection. And I think they're going to go with David Jiricek here. And a lot of people have compared him to Jacob Slavin or Mackenzie Weegar in that spectrum between those two. So I think the Kraken will get a very good guy there. At number 3, moving into the top 3, I know my Coyotes fans are just so thrilled with me with the truth bombs I was dropping on them last week. So we're going to be a little bit nicer to them here today. I have them going with Logan Cooley with their 3rd selection in this year's draft. I don't see them moving that draft pick. I think they need a guy like Logan Cooley, considering how bad they botched their move with Barrett Hayden. I think you need to add that kind of center, and this will be Logan Cooley's spot. I think Logan Cooley is a center that they desperately need. He really complements a guy like Clayton Keller really well, and hopefully Dylan Guenther. I mean, we could be looking at a line very shortly here in the near future. Logan Cooley, Dylan Guenther, and Clayton Keller. That's a pretty solid top line, and I think that the Arizona Coyotes can kind of round out that line with a really good center here. A really solid center here with Logan Cooley. He's been playing in the U.S. National Development Program. A lot of people have compared him to Mitch Marner and that type of player. So you want to talk about a good hockey player, could be coming to the Yotes door next season in Logan Cooley. Again, a lot of this depends on what happens with the New Jersey Devils pick. Do the Devils take the 2nd selection? Do they trade the 2nd selection? Because that is going to have a lot of say on what happens here with Arizona at number 3. And with that number 2 pick here, I have the New Jersey Devils, if they decide to keep that pick. I have them going with winger Juraj Slafkovsky. Slafkovsky is playing in TPS Turku. That sound familiar? Player that played in TPS Turku in Finland. 2nd overall draft pick back in 2019. It doesn't ring a bell. That's right. Capo Caco of the New York Rangers. So Juraj Slafkovsky has playing with TPS Turku in Liga. And talk about a comparable. Juraj Slafkovsky has been compared to Jaromir Jagr and plays that type of game. So talk about a comparison. Woo! Juraj Slafkovsky and Jaromir Jagr. So if he has any kind of career compared to Jagr, that's definitely a huge comparable. A lot of people like Slafkovsky and the type of game he plays. He's projected to go 2nd overall. He's projected to be an NHL All-Star and top-of-the-line player, and this would be a no-brainer here for the Devils. You complement that with Nico Hischier's line on the top line. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, who was that? You got Nico Hischier, Juraj Slafkovsky, and throw whoever else you want on there. You know, whether that's what's his name? I keep forgetting his name. The New Jersey Devils winger. I really like. Damn it, guys. Not good. This is not good. I'm just completely having a brain fart here at the end, the 30-minute mark. Jesper Bratt. Thank you. Jesper Bratt or Pavel Zacha on that line. You also have Yegor Sharangovich and Jack Hughes on the second line. I mean, Dawson Mercer, Jesus, they have a lot of talent there. So you throw Slafkovsky on the wing, Devils are looking pretty good there. Again, that's even if they keep that pick. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if somebody were to trade for that second pick. Don't be surprised if they go with Logan Cooley at that second selection. I'm calling it now, right? So that means at number 1, Montreal. No surprise here. I think easily they're going to go with Shane Wright. Shane Wright from the Kingston Frontenacs of the Ontario Hockey League. I think he is at this point the consensus first overall pick. A lot of people like Shane Wright. They've liked him for the last couple years. And yes, he is not Connor Bedard. Yes, he's not Connor McDavid. Yes, he's not Austin Matthews. But you know what? Shane Wright's a really damn good hockey player. And standing at 6 foot, 191 pounds, he's projected to be an NHL All-Star, top of the lineup player. He's really good in terms of his hockey sense and his compete level. He's got a really good high-end shot. He was the captain of the OHL Kingston team. He was 8th in the OHL in scoring last season. In the OHL, at 15 years old, he's one of the few players that got the exceptional status. At 15 years old, he scored 39 goals, 66 points in 58 games. Absolutely incredible. But a lot of people like him all around. He's a great player. He won't be an elite scorer in the league, but a lot of people have compared him in the same vein as a Patrice Bergeron-esque player. You think about basically 2 Patrice Bergeron comparables on the Montreal Canadiens down the middle, Nick Suzuki and Shane Wright next season. I would say that fills the void of Jesperi Kotkaniemi pretty damn well for the Montreal Canadiens, and they're really building something there. You team that with some good players on the wing for Shane Wright, and you're building a really good group there, a good culture in Montreal. You have him playing with a guy like Gallagher. I really like the ceiling of potential for Shane Wright. And like I said, he's not the guy in next year's draft, Connor Bedard, but he's a really good high-end prospect. And I think that the Montreal Canadiens will be quite pleased to select him first overall. So that is it for our draft lottery predictions here for 2022 in May. Of course, I'm going to do another one before the draft in June, so stay tuned for that here over the next couple weeks. Guys, let me know who you think will be the first overall selection. What do you think is going to happen with some of these picks? Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.